In a recent breakthrough, researchers have made a groundbreaking discovery, revealing the presence of microplastics deep within the respiratory system of human beings, a finding that has never been reported before. The analysis conducted on various samples has consistently demonstrated the presence of these microscopic plastic particles in nearly all the cases examined. According to the scientists, the presence of microplastics has become widespread and can now be found in every corner of the globe. As a result, human exposure to these pollutants has become inevitable, leading to growing concerns about the potential risks they pose to our health. During the surgical procedures, a total of 13 patients underwent tissue removal, and subsequent analysis revealed the presence of microplastics in 11 of these cases. The most frequently detected microplastic particles were composed of polypropylene, which is commonly employed in plastic packaging and pipes, as well as polyethylene terephthalate, which finds applications in the production of bottles. It is worth noting that 2 prior studies, conducted separately, obtained comparable results, demonstrating the occurrence of microplastics in lung tissue collected during autopsies. In the realm of human exposure, it has been established that individuals are not only inhaling minuscule particles, but also inadvertently ingesting them through the consumption of food and water. Moreover, there have been documented cases of workers who have been extensively exposed to elevated levels of microplastics and have subsequently experienced the onset of various illnesses. In March, researchers made a groundbreaking discovery by detecting the presence of microplastics in human blood for the very first time. This finding indicates that these tiny particles have the ability to circulate throughout the body and potentially accumulate in organs. While the exact impact of microplastics on human health remains unknown, scientists are expressing concern due to laboratory studies that demonstrate the damaging effects of these particles on human cells. As of right now, scientists have said that they did not expect to find the highest number of particles in the lower regions of the lungs or particles of the sizes they found. These statements were made by Laura Sadowski at Hull York Medical School in the United Kingdom, who was a senior author of the study. She continued by saying that it is surprising, as the airways are smaller in the lower parts of the lungs, and we would have expected particles of these sizes to be filtered out or trapped before getting this deep. The data presented here represents a significant advancement in the realm of microplastics and their implications for human health. This valuable information holds immense potential in enabling researchers to fabricate genuine environmental conditions within laboratory settings, thus facilitating more accurate and insightful assessments regarding the health effects of these pollutants. The research, recently approved for publication in the esteemed journal Science of the Total Environment, involved a meticulous analysis of healthy lung tissue samples taken adjacent to the surgical sites. In order to accurately gauge the impact of outside contamination, control samples were also employed. The researchers carried out a comprehensive examination, taking into account a multitude of factors to ensure the reliability and validity of their findings. A comprehensive study conducted in Brazil in 2021, focusing on autopsy samples, revealed the presence of microplastics in 13 out of 20 individuals who were analyzed. It is worth noting that the average age of the participants in this study was higher than those assessed in the research. Among the various types of microplastics identified, polyethylene, commonly used in the production of plastic bags, emerged as one of the most prevalent particles. The researchers involved in the study drew a significant conclusion, stating that the inhalation of these contaminants in the respiratory system could potentially lead to detrimental health outcomes. A comprehensive study conducted in the United States in 1998 focused on lung cancer patients and yielded some intriguing findings. The researchers discovered the presence of plastic and plant fibers, including cotton, in over 100 samples collected. What is particularly noteworthy is that these fibers were identified in both cancerous and non-cancerous tissue samples. A staggering quantity of plastic waste is indiscriminately disposed of in our environment, causing significant harm. This pervasive problem extends far beyond our immediate surroundings, as microplastics have infiltrated even the most remote corners of the planet, from the lofty heights of Mount Everest to the unfathomable depths of our oceans. The detrimental implications of this contamination resonate deeply, as studies have revealed the presence of microplastics not only in the placentas of pregnant women, but also within the delicate tissues of developing fetuses in pregnant rats. A recent review thoroughly examined the potential risks of cancer associated with micro and nanoplastics. The conclusion highlighted the pressing need for extensive research on how these tiny plastic particles impact the structures and functions of the human body. Microplastics have also been found inside human heart tissues for the first time. Microplastics have become a pervasive presence in various aspects of our lives, including our food, water, air, and even certain regions within our bodies. Despite extensive research, our understanding of microplastic distribution within internal organs that are shielded from direct environmental exposure remains limited. However, a recent pilot study conducted on individuals who underwent heart surgery has shed new light on this issue. As reported by researchers in ACS's Environmental Science and AMP Technology, microplastics have been detected in numerous heart tissues, indicating their unexpected presence. This groundbreaking finding not only highlights the widespread prevalence of microplastics, but also suggests that these microscopic particles may be inadvertently introduced during surgical procedures. Microplastics refer to small plastic fragments that measure less than 5 millimeters in width, roughly equivalent to the size of a pencil eraser. Recent research has shed light on the fact that these minuscule particles can find their way into the human body through various entry points like the mouth, nose, and other interconnected body cavities. However, it is worth noting that numerous organs and tissues remain enclosed within the body, leaving scientists without sufficient knowledge regarding the extent of their exposure to microplastics and the potential consequences arising from it. Consequently, the scientific team undertook a comprehensive investigation with the aim of exploring both direct and indirect pathways through which microplastics may have infiltrated the cardiovascular systems of individuals. Additionally, they highlight the significance of this finding, shedding light on the overlooked pathway of microplastic exposure through invasive medical procedures. These procedures allow for direct access to the bloodstream and internal tissues, making them an important route of exposure. However, the researchers emphasize the need for further investigations to comprehensively comprehend the effects of microplastics on a person's cardiovascular system, especially in the context of heart surgery. Understanding the prognosis of individuals after undergoing such procedures in the presence of microplastic exposure remains a crucial area that requires additional research. Back in February, people across Turkey said that they observed birds acting strange prior to the earthquake which hit the region, and they've now said that birds are once again exhibiting strange behavior. Oddly enough, it's been observed that birds behave strangely before an earthquake, leading some to believe that they may have the ability to sense seismic activity before it occurs. Interestingly, some animals have been observed to have the ability to detect earthquakes before they occur. This is believed to be due to their heightened sensitivity to changes in their environment, such as vibrations or electromagnetic fields. On the 6th of February 2023, a seismic event with a magnitude of 7.8 hit the southern and central areas of Turkey, as well as the northern and western regions of Syria. The focal point was located 37 kilometers in the west-northwest direction of Gaziantep. The seismic disturbance reached its highest level of intensity in certain regions of Antakya, which is located in the Hatay province. At approximately 24 minutes past 1, there was a 7.7 magnitude earthquake that occurred immediately after the preceding event. The earthquake's epicenter was located 95 kilometers in the north-northeast direction from the initial one. The quake caused extensive damage, and tens of thousands of people lost their lives as a result. Several days before this earthquake hit, people living in the region noticed that birds and other animals were acting strange, detailing that birds could be seen flying around in circles and heading towards higher ground. As of right now, people have reported that this is happening again, and it's led some to take the sightings more seriously. It's for this reason that people worry when they see animals acting like this, with residents fearing that a big earthquake could hit the region within the next few days. There is evidence to suggest that some animals have the ability to sense when an earthquake is about to hit. This is thought to be due to their sensitivity to changes in the Earth's magnetic field, which can be disrupted by seismic activity. One well-known example is the behavior of animals before the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami. In the days leading up to the earthquake, there were reports of animals acting strangely, such as elephants and dogs refusing to go near the shoreline, and birds leaving their nests and flying inland. Back in 1975, a Chinese official reported that snakes, frogs, and rats had all abandoned their habitats before a major earthquake struck. Other studies have found that animals can exhibit unusual behavior before earthquakes, such as dogs barking more than usual and fish swimming to the surface of their tanks. Due to animals exhibiting these strange behaviors, it's caused some to say that this might be one way to predict earthquakes. Scientists continue to study this phenomenon in the hopes of better understanding the relationship between animals and seismic activity. Birds have a remarkable ability to navigate and orient themselves during long-distance migration, even across oceans and continents. One of the key ways in which birds accomplish this is by detecting the Earth's magnetic field. Scientists believe that birds have specialized structures in their eyes that allow them to see magnetic fields. Specifically, there is evidence that birds are able to detect the direction and intensity of the Earth's magnetic field using a protein called cryptochrome, which is sensitive to magnetic fields and is found in the eyes of birds. Once birds have detected the Earth's magnetic field, they are able to use it to orient themselves and navigate during migration. For example, some migratory birds appear to use a magnetic map to determine their position relative to the Earth's magnetic field, allowing them to follow a particular migratory route. Earthquakes can indeed have an effect on Earth's magnetic field, although the magnitude of the effect is typically quite small. The interaction between earthquakes and Earth's magnetic field is a complex one that is not yet fully understood by scientists, but there are several ways in which earthquakes can affect the magnetic field. One way that earthquakes can affect the magnetic field is by generating electric currents in the ground. When rock is deformed or crushed during an earthquake, it can create electrical charges that flow through the ground. These charges can then induce electrical currents in the ionosphere, which is the upper layer of the atmosphere where Earth's magnetic field interacts with charged particles from the sun. Another way that earthquakes can affect the magnetic field is by changing the physical properties of the rocks in the Earth's crust. The rocks in the crust contain magnetic minerals, which can become magnetized by the Earth's magnetic field over time. When an earthquake occurs, the physical properties of the rocks can be altered, which can change the magnetic properties of the minerals. This can, in turn, affect the overall strength and direction of Earth's magnetic field. The United States Geological Survey said the following: "The earliest reference we have to unusual animal behavior prior to a significant earthquake is from Greece in 373 BC. Rats, weasels, snakes, and centipedes reportedly left their homes and headed for safety several days before a destructive earthquake. Anecdotal evidence abounds of animals, fish, birds, reptiles, and insects exhibiting strange behavior anywhere from weeks to seconds before an earthquake. Most, but not all, scientists pursuing this mystery are in China or Japan. An earthquake forecast was made in China several decades ago, based on small earthquakes and unusual animal activity. Many people chose to sleep outside of their homes and thus were spared when the main earthquake indeed occurred and caused widespread destruction. However, usually no large earthquake follows this type of seismic activity, and unfortunately, many earthquakes are preceded by no precursory events whatsoever." End quote. The most dangerous thing about an earthquake is the potential for widespread and severe damage to buildings and infrastructure, which can result in loss of life and injury. Earthquakes can cause the ground to shake, liquefaction of soil, landslides, and tsunamis. The strength of an earthquake is measured by its magnitude on the Richter scale, which ranges from 0 to 10. A magnitude 7 or higher earthquake can cause significant damage and loss of life. In addition to physical damage, earthquakes can also cause emotional trauma and long-lasting psychological effects, particularly in those who have experienced severe shaking or destruction of their homes and communities. The aftermath of an earthquake can also be dangerous, with the risk of aftershocks, landslides, and other hazards such as gas leaks, fires, and disruptions to vital infrastructure, such as water and power supplies. The severity of an earthquake's impact depends on a variety of factors. including the magnitude and depth of the earthquake, the distance from the epicenter, and the type of terrain and construction in the affected area. Earthquake-prone areas are often subject to building codes and other regulations designed to minimize damage and protect residents. But even in areas with strict regulations, earthquakes can still cause significant harm. Volcanoes are classified based on their size, activity level, and potential impact on their surroundings. There are two main types of volcanoes: stratovolcanoes, also known as composite volcanoes, and shield volcanoes. However, supervolcanoes are a special type of volcano that are much larger and more powerful than either of these. Normal volcanoes can range in size from just a few hundred meters to several kilometers in height. In contrast, supervolcanoes are much larger, with a caldera that can be tens of kilometers wide. Normal volcanoes can erupt relatively frequently, sometimes several times a year, or even more often. In contrast, supervolcanoes have much longer intervals between eruptions, typically on the scale of tens or hundreds of thousands of years. While normal volcanic eruptions can be devastating to the surrounding area, they are generally much smaller than supervolcanic eruptions. A supervolcano eruption is typically considered to be one that releases at least 1,000 cubic kilometers of material, which is more than 100 times the volume of material released by the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. Normal volcanoes typically erupt with magma that is rich in silica and other minerals, which makes it very viscous and prone to explosive eruptions. In contrast, supervolcanoes typically erupt with magma that is much less viscous and more fluid, which allows it to flow over a much wider area. A normal volcanic eruption can have devastating impacts on the surrounding area, including destruction of property and loss of life. However, a supervolcanic eruption can have impacts that are felt around the world, including global cooling due to ash and gas released into the atmosphere, which can have a significant impact on global climate and agriculture. Scientists have just warned that supervolcanoes are currently our biggest threat and that they have the ability to devastate modern society. Michael Cassidy, a professor of volcanology at the University of Birmingham, said the following: "Over the next century, large-scale volcanic eruptions are hundreds of times more likely to occur than our asteroid and comet impacts put together." End quote. This recent announcement comes after scientists were studying asteroids and our planetary defense and revealed that we are doing very little in regards to supervolcanoes. The researchers have also noted that the human population has massively increased since the last supervolcano eruption, further noting that increased human activity in volcanic areas, such as mining and geothermal power production, can sometimes trigger small to moderate eruptions. The researchers involved in the study said they came to this conclusion after looking at planetary defense systems around the world. Governments and global agencies spend varying amounts on planetary defense initiatives, depending on their priorities and available resources. The main focus of planetary defense is to identify, track, and potentially mitigate the impact of near-Earth objects, such as asteroids and comets, that could pose a threat to the planet. The largest funder of planetary defense initiatives is currently NASA, which has an annual budget of around $150 million for its Planetary Defense Coordination Office. This office is responsible for leading NASA's efforts to detect and characterize potentially hazardous near-Earth objects, as well as developing and testing strategies to deflect or destroy them if necessary. Other countries and organizations also contribute to planetary defense efforts, but the funding amounts vary widely. For example, the European Space Agency has an annual budget of around $15 million for its Space Situational Awareness Program, which includes near-Earth object detection and tracking. Rather worryingly, it was during this study that researchers said that there's very little we can do when it comes to supervolcanoes. Supervolcanoes are considered to be one of the most dangerous natural disasters that could occur on Earth. A supervolcano eruption is an incredibly powerful explosion that can release thousands of times more energy than a regular volcanic eruption, and the amount of energy released is enough to cover an entire continent with ash, leading to global impacts. One of these eruptions can release an enormous amount of ash into the atmosphere, which can block out the sun for weeks, months, or even years. This can cause global cooling, which can impact agriculture and cause food shortages. The ash released during a supervolcano eruption can also combine with water vapor in the atmosphere, leading to the production of acid rain. This can damage crops, forests, and water supplies. A supervolcano eruption can also release pyroclastic flows, which are fast-moving currents of hot gas and volcanic matter, and these flows can reach speeds of over 100 kilometers per hour and can incinerate everything in their path. A supervolcano eruption can trigger tsunamis that can cause massive destruction along coastlines. The displacement of large volumes of water can lead to huge waves that can travel thousands of kilometers across oceans. The effects of a supervolcano eruption can be felt around the world. The release of ash, gases, and other materials into the atmosphere can impact climate, leading to global cooling, changes in rainfall patterns, and other effects. At this moment in time, researchers involved in these studies have said that a supervolcano eruption is incredibly dangerous due to its massive explosions, large ash clouds, acid rain, pyroclastic flows, tsunamis, and global impacts. While these eruptions are rare, they've noted that the most famous supervolcano that is considered potentially active is the Yellowstone caldera in the United States, which last erupted approximately 640,000 years ago. Scientists have said that one of the most worrying outcomes after the eruption of a supervolcano would be the significant impact it would have on agriculture. The primary impact would come from the ash cloud that would be produced during the eruption. This ash cloud would block out sunlight, leading to a drop in temperature and reduced photosynthesis in plants. This would result in a decrease in crop yields and could potentially lead to famine and food shortages. In addition to the ash cloud, the eruption could also release large amounts of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. This gas can combine with water vapor to form sulfuric acid, which can fall to the ground as acid rain. Acid rain can damage crops and make soil less fertile, further reducing crop yields. The eruption of a supervolcano could also have long-term effects on agriculture, with researchers saying that the ash and other volcanic materials that are deposited on the ground would alter the chemical composition of the soil, making it less fertile. The volcanic ash can also release nutrients into the soil, which can lead to an initial boost in plant growth, but can also lead to nutrient depletion over time. The last time a supervolcano erupted was approximately 26,500 years ago, when the Taupo volcano in New Zealand erupted. This eruption was classified as an 8 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, which is the highest level on the index, with scientists saying that it produced more than 1,000 cubic kilometers of ash and volcanic material. The eruption was so powerful that it created a large caldera, or collapsed volcanic crater, which is now filled with water and known as Lake Taupo. Another notable supervolcano eruption occurred approximately 74,000 years ago, when the Toba caldera in Indonesia erupted. This eruption produced an estimated 2,800 cubic kilometers of ash and volcanic material, which blanketed much of India and Southeast Asia. The eruption is believed to have had significant global consequences, including a potential cooling effect on the Earth's climate and a genetic bottleneck in human evolution. It is important to note that supervolcano eruptions are relatively rare events and can occur on timescales of hundreds of thousands to millions of years. The bottleneck effect is a genetic phenomenon that occurs when a population is drastically reduced in size, leading to a significant loss of genetic diversity. This can happen due to a number of reasons, such as natural disasters, diseases, or human-driven factors, such as overhunting or habitat destruction. In the context of human evolution, the bottleneck effect refers to the theory that modern humans descended from a small group of our ancestors who survived a population bottleneck event around 70,000 years ago. This bottleneck event has been attributed to a number of factors, including a massive volcanic eruption in Sumatra, Indonesia, which caused a global climate shift and led to a severe reduction in human population size. As a result of this bottleneck event, the genetic diversity of the human population was greatly reduced, which means that many genetic variations that had been present in our ancestors were lost. This loss of genetic diversity is thought to have had a number of important effects on human evolution, including making us more susceptible to certain diseases and reducing our ability to adapt to changing environmental conditions. Despite the reduction in genetic diversity caused by the bottleneck event, some genetic variations were still present in the surviving population. Over time, these variations became more common, as the human population grew and diversified, leading to the genetic diversity that we see in modern humans today. The supervolcano that most are worried about is Yellowstone, which is located in northwestern Wyoming. If the Yellowstone supervolcano were to erupt, it would have catastrophic effects, not just for the local region, but potentially for the entire planet. First, the eruption would likely be much more explosive and violent than a typical volcanic eruption. The initial blast could send ash, gas, and debris tens of thousands of feet into the atmosphere, causing a massive ash cloud to form. This ash cloud could spread across the United States and even circle the globe within a matter of weeks or months, blocking out sunlight and reducing temperatures worldwide. The ash cloud could also trigger a nuclear winter effect, with the reduced sunlight causing a drop in global temperatures and disrupting weather patterns. This could lead to crop failures and food shortages, as well as a range of other environmental and societal impacts. Closer to the eruption site, the ash and debris from the blast could cause widespread devastation. Buildings, roads, and other infrastructure could be buried under several feet of ash, and local communities could be cut off from the outside world for weeks or even months. The explosion could trigger massive mudslides and landslides, and ashfall could pollute water supplies, making them unsafe to drink. In the long term, the Yellowstone eruption could have even more serious consequences. The ash cloud and subsequent nuclear winter could trigger a mass extinction event, wiping out entire species of plants and animals. The eruption could also lead to a long-term cooling trend, with global temperatures dropping and climate patterns shifting. Overall, an eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano would be a global catastrophe, with far-reaching and long-lasting consequences for the planet and all its inhabitants. Yellowstone National Park, in collaboration with the U.S. Geological Survey, closely monitors the Yellowstone supervolcano for any changes in behavior that could indicate an impending eruption. The park has an extensive network of monitoring stations that continuously measure and record data on earthquake activity, ground deformation, gas emissions, and other indicators of volcanic activity. The USGS also maintains a Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, which is responsible for monitoring and studying the volcano. The Yellowstone Volcano Observatory uses a variety of tools, including seismometers, GPS instruments, and satellite imagery, to track changes in the volcano's behavior. The Yellowstone Volcano Observatory also works closely with other agencies, such as the National Park Service and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to ensure that plans are in place to respond to a potential eruption. In addition to monitoring the volcano, the park and its partners conduct extensive research on the geology, ecology, and hydrology of the region. This research provides important insights into the processes that drive volcanic activity and helps scientists better understand the potential hazards associated with the Yellowstone supervolcano. The park and its partners also engage in outreach and education programs to help the public better understand the risks and potential impacts of a volcanic eruption. Scientists find potentially alive 830-million-year-old microorganisms. A recent discovery has scientists rethinking the history of life on Earth. A team of geologists have discovered potentially living microorganisms that may be 830 million years old. They found the tiny remains of prokaryotic and algal life inside halite crystals. This discovery points to the possibility that halite, also known as rock salt or sodium chloride, may be a great resource for studying ancient saltwater environments. Additionally, just like the microorganisms the geologists found inside the halite crystals, they may find more organisms that might still be alive. This study has many implications for the study of ancient life here on Earth, but also on other planets like Mars. On Mars, scientists have already found salt deposits that may be evidence of ancient water reservoirs. The possible life that scientists found inside the halite crystals also presents ancient life in an entirely new way. In their research paper presenting the study, the team writes, "Ancient chemical sediments, both on terrestrial and extraterrestrial origin, should be considered potential hosts for ancient microorganisms and organic compounds. Ancient microfossils had been found pressed into rock formations, which preserve life in a different way than salt. Inside the halite, fluid can be preserved, and these fluid inclusions are incredibly valuable as they contain information about the water at the time the mineral was preserved, like the water temperature, chemistry, and atmospheric temperature. Previously, scientists have found other microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, and algae inside halite environments. Some of the questions they are still trying to answer are whether or not those organisms are as old as the halite they live in, and whether or not they are even still alive. The researchers have noted that the fluid inclusions could serve as microhabitats for the organisms. They also know that there are organisms in modern extreme environments that can essentially go into hibernation where they are still alive, with their biological activities slowed down. This could be the case with the microorganisms inside the halite. In addition, they have already found living prokaryotes inside 250 million-year-old halite, so it's possible that number will reach as high as 830 million with other findings such as this recent one. Scientists researching this finding have noted that these microorganisms can now be identified without destroying the samples, which could give scientists a new set of tools that can be used for identification that can have broader implications for our understanding of Earth. Earth has a 27.5 million-year heartbeat, but we don't know what causes it. Mother Earth is a mysterious force to be reckoned with. As much as we love to honor ourselves as a great species, we have only existed for a tiny portion of the Earth's current lifespan. There is a reason why ancient pagan societies all over the classical world viewed our beloved planet as a maternal force of divinity. It provides for us, gives us food and resources we can use for our survival and leisure. Whereas in the past our ancestors revered the elements and the power they had over them in fear and fascination, we have taken a stance of control. We like to believe we are in power, but the earth, nature, and all chemicals and creatures have existed before we even evolved. Nature has a mind of its own. It does its own thing and cares little for humans. And as it turns out, the earth has a heartbeat and a pulse which has existed for about 260 million years. Currently, there is a lack of explanation as to why this is, but a research team from the University of New York has been carrying out the study with Michael Rapino, a geologist, as the team's leader. This heartbeat is not the kind we are accustomed to. Rather, it is a title given to recurring clusters of phenomena and events. Events such as mass extinction, where major life forms on Earth perish. Past mass extinctions have occurred simultaneously with the Earth's pulse. Generally, whenever there is one major catastrophe happening, it is followed by other minor disasters, volcanic eruptions, fluctuating sea levels, magma spewing from the Earth's crust, among other things. The study concluded that this heartbeat and pulse has repeated various times in a cycle during the past 260 million years, but there is no scientific reason as to why that is. Scientists are baffled by the cycle's existence. The knowledge that our planet, which provides for us, also harshly punishes us and takes away what she has given is frightful to be sure, but there is no need to worry at the moment, as the next predicted pulse is not supposed to occur for another 20 million years. In the last 260 million years, the dinosaurs roamed the Earth, became extinct, the original continent of Pangaea split into 7, and humans evolved into the civilizations we are today, and all through that time, natural disasters have hit harshly and cruelly, often all at once. Every 27.5 million years, the heartbeat repeats, and disastrous consequences repeat in its wake. Rampino addressed the fact that many geologists believe these events are simply random by assuring them that their study found a continuous cycle which occurs, historically, at the same time, too concise to be random. These geologic events are correlated and not random, says Rampino. Ozone hole near South Park shrinks to smallest size ever. Humanity's impact on the Earth is well known, and our impact on the ozone layer is one that has incited significant action since it was growing year on year. In 2019, the hole in the ozone layer near the South Pole shrunk to its smallest size since 1982. It is not actually a hole, but merely an area with depleted levels of ozone. Specifically, an area in which ozone concentrations drop below the historical threshold of 222 Dobson units.
National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA, polar orbiting satellites are used to monitor the ozone hole. According to NASA and the NOAA, the Antarctic ozone hole was affected by abnormal weather patterns in 2019, limiting ozone depletion, which led to the smallest ozone hole since 1982. Ozone, which is comprised of 3 oxygen atoms, occurs naturally in the stratosphere and adds protection to the planet from ultraviolet solar radiation, which can cause cataracts and skin cancer. Stratospheric ice clouds form in the Antarctic when temperatures fall below -78°C, and these clouds promote production of chlorine and bromine, which when combined with sunlight in the Antarctic spring causes a reaction that leads to a loss of ozone, resulting in the Antarctic ozone hole. The annual ozone hole reached its peak extent of 6.3 million square miles on September 8, 2019, and then shrank to less than 3.9 million square miles for the remainder of September and October. Unusually warm weather led to the smaller ozone depletion. Similar weather patterns in 1988 and 2002 also resulted in atypically small ozone holes. Normal weather conditions tend to result in a maximum area of about 8 million square miles in late September or early October. The 2019 weather systems were unusually strong, warming the Antarctic stratosphere. It was 16 Celsius warmer than average during September, a time where ozone destruction is normally at its peak. According to NASA, it was the warmest September for 40 years. The Antarctic polar vortex was also weakened, moving its center, which is normally over the South Pole. This slowed vortex rotation, allowing air to sink in the lower stratosphere, which impacted the ozone hole in 2 ways. It minimized the persistence of polar stratospheric clouds and allowed ozone-rich air from elsewhere in the southern hemisphere to travel to above the Antarctic ozone hole area. There is a massive variability each year with the size of the ozone hole. Whilst 2019 was the smallest on record since 1982, the 2020 hole is above average for the last decade. On September 20th, 2020, the annual ozone hole reached its peak area at 9.6 million square miles, driven by persistent cold temperatures and strong circumpolar winds, similar to the value recorded in 2018. However, by approximately 2070, scientists expect the ozone hole to shrink back to the size it was in 1980.
DNA is a molecule that contains the genetic instructions used in the development and functioning of all living organisms. It's a long, double-stranded helix composed of 4 different types of nucleotides: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. The sequence of these nucleotides determines the genetic code of an organism, which governs everything from its physical traits to its biochemical processes. DNA is located in the nucleus of a cell and is responsible for the transmission of genetic information from one generation to the next. Contact with extraterrestrial life is a highly debated topic, not just within scientific and academic circles. Tons of research efforts have been poured into looking to contact alternate life forms or even locate life elsewhere, and plenty have questioned if contacting advanced life forms would be a wise idea. That is, if they are there at all. However, research developments in DNA sequencing have pushed people to ask the question, could aliens be communicating to us through the DNA of bacteria? This theory has actually been in discussion for decades, with members of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence posing some interesting insights. Despite these debates having existed for a while, these concepts and ideas were largely hypothetical, though following the sequencing of the human genome, marked in 2003 with the completion of the Human Genome Project, we know we are able to look for patterns within DNA strands. We know that bacteria in space have a long travel life and are capable of being fired great distances, even light years away from where they began. This means that bacteria could act as good hosts for messages, with aliens being able to send messages to us from afar. Trusting their notes will make it a good way through the universe. Robert Zubrin spoke at the Breakthrough Discuss in 2019 conference at the University of California to discuss the plausibility of communicating through encoded DNA. It's important to note that he is also an astronautical engineer. He said, whilst explaining how the tiny microbial bacteria could break the gravitational force of the stars they reside with, that F, G, and K spectral type stars could allow bacteria to break away. These stars are typically the brighter ones in the sky. He goes on to explain that other stars may struggle to push the bacteria outside of their own solar systems, preventing the interstellar space travel needed to receive alien codes. However, Zubrin did cite a paper that theorized that if a bacterial colony was strongly magnetized, then it could create a miniature magnetic sail. This gives the bacteria the potential to gain a 500 km/s solar wind, enough to move it out of the solar system with ease. Of course, this is all hypothetical, and there are a great number of other theories, speculating as to how this is possible at all. Unfortunately, there are not any certain answers. In regard to the content of these possible messages, we know based on research conducted a little closer to home that we are able to encode bacterial DNA with information. The New York Genome Project was able to encode 215,000 terabytes of information per gram of DNA. An individual bacterium usually ranges between 1 and 10 millionths of a meter, giving plenty of room to code in a bacterial colony. As of 2019, it was considered realistic to encode some with 900 terabytes of data, which, when given some context, is ginormous. Zubrin likens this data size to 2 billion 200-page books. Zubrin suggests that the next step in this research is to begin looking for encoded microbes around us. He suggests exposing bacteria to, as he describes, space conditions, to see which bacterium would be best suited and adapted for flight and to survive in various conditions. Any anomalous microbes in our stratosphere could be worth further investigation. By the time we figure out any DNA codes, it could be equivalent to uncovering an ancient artifact. NASA found a strange radio signal coming from Venus. Even though scientists are always on the lookout for strange or seemingly inexplicable phenomena when venturing through space, when they do encounter odd or mysterious happenings, they are frequently not at all what they expected to find. Recently, NASA's Parker Solar Probe entered the upper atmosphere of Earth's neighbor Venus in order to collect data about the planet, and the probe detected odd radio signals coming from the atmosphere. And, while those of us unfamiliar with the inner workings of space might immediately jump to the conclusion that these could be signals from an alien race living on the planet, the true meaning is something altogether more exciting, at least for scientists studying space, that is. These radio signals that were detected are naturally occurring within the atmosphere of Venus and indicate that the Parker Solar Probe, flying over 830 kilometers above the planet, had entered the outer atmosphere, specifically an upper layer known as the ionosphere. Remarkably, the last time that anyone had been able to detect radio readings from Venus's upper atmosphere was almost 30 years ago, in 1992, which means that this new data will be able to give researchers valuable insight into the changes that have occurred on the planet in the intervening years. This is especially valuable as the unforgiving heat of Venus's atmosphere makes the planet incredibly hard to explore and study. So, what did the researchers discover about the planet that was different than in 1992? For starters, the atmosphere appears to be much thinner than the last time that data was gathered. Researchers believe that this is due to the fact that the Sun's magnetic poles mysteriously swap places every 11 years as a result of the star's solar cycles. Before the magnetic poles switch, the Sun's magnetic field weakens and then flares back to its maximum strength before fading again into the next switch. Because the earlier 1992 measurement was taken during a time in the solar cycle when the magnetic field was close to the maximum, and the current reading is while we are approaching the solar minimum, scientists hypothesize that the ionosphere of Venus is changing with the solar cycle and may be greatly influenced by the Sun's magnetic fields. Although why this is happening is unclear, scientists hope that future data gathered from the planet will help to clue them in.
Physicists may have found a way to create traversable wormholes. The rules of the universe are fairly fixed, and the aim of some of the greatest areas of science is to try and understand what these rules are. Fun favourite sci-fi tropes often like to toy with these rules and play with the ideas of what if they were not there. It's this kind of rule-breaking that leads to ideas like getting lost in wormholes and the fun space-themed dangers we see on the big screen. In reality, the idea of wormholes could exist, in the rules laid out by the general theory of relativity and the standard model of physics, but these were not traversable, meaning you cannot move through them. That is, until now. A wormhole is a theoretical structure. The idea is to think of it like a tunnel. where the two ends represent different points in space-time. This means that you go into the wormhole and emerge in the same place at a different point in time, or at the same point in time at a different place, or at a different point in time and in a different place. People are still speculating whether wormholes could possibly exist. Sure, they do not go against the ideas of the general theory of relativity, but we certainly have never seen any. In 2021, a team of physicists working at Princeton found a loophole in this wormhole theory. With the ideas laid out through quantum mechanics, in a 5-dimensional universe, it could be possible, according to these researchers, to create a wormhole large enough for a human spacecraft to travel through and could spit out the astronauts on the other side of the universe. However, this idea is purely confined to the mathematical and theoretical world. It is highly unlikely for something like this to naturally exist, and our modern technology is nowhere near advanced enough to facilitate something this complex. The idea that wormholes may exist and that they could be traveled through is truly so fascinating, though it does not seem like we will be skipping around the universe anytime soon. Missing black hole with 10 billion solar masses. When it comes to space, there is one thing that we have all heard about: black holes. Books, movies, and TV love to feature this celestial phenomenon. Though our grasp of understanding is rather tenuous, it seems that a black hole exists at the very center of each galaxy, drawing anything and everything into it with its unparalleled gravitational pull. As such, it seems that keeping track of black holes would be the easy part. If they are so huge, monumental, and powerful, how could one go missing? Even so, that is exactly what happened with this black hole. About a decade ago, Dr. Mark Postman, a member of the Space Telescope Science Institute, was surveying surrounding galaxies with the famous Hubble Space Telescope. While surveying, Dr. Postman found a supergiant galaxy now referred to as A2261 BCG, with no black hole at the center. Indeed, the finding was exceedingly strange. An expert of galactic nuclei at the National Optical Infrared Astronomy Research Laboratory in Tucson, Arizona, Todd Lauer, added that the absence of the black hole was really unusual. According to everything we know about black holes, this supergiant galaxy must have one at its center. This black hole is expected to house 10 billion solar masses, while the black hole at the center of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, has only 4 billion. It seems impossible and unfathomable that a black hole of this size has simply evaded notice or attention. So what exactly is happening? Using the ideas postulated by 3 astronomers, Mitchell Begelman, Martin Rees, and Robert Blandford, one theory says that A2261 BCG originally had 2 black holes that eventually combined and turned into nothing. Of course, if the burst was unequal on both sides, the impact could have sent one of the black holes flying through the galaxy. However, after analyzing and surveying A2261 BCG even further, scientists found something interesting. The diffuse core of the galaxy seems to house 4 little knots of light, causing some to think that the black hole's gravitational pull is keeping them there. Sarah Birks-Ballor of West Virginia University led a surveying team with the hopes of untangling what the 4 knots could be. They found that 2 of them were most likely 2 smaller galaxies existing inside the main galaxy. Hubble was unable to provide enough details on the other 2 knots to reach a sound conclusion. Luckily, Hubble's successor, the James Webb Space Telescope, was launched in late 2021. Astronomers are hopeful that a telescope of this power and magnitude will be able to describe the 4 knots in detail and tell us the location of the missing black hole. Despite how improbable it seems that a black hole housing 10 billion solar masses could evade detection for so long, it just goes to show that outer space holds more mysteries than we ever thought. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.